Believe you me when I tell you, I love my job. I get to record and cover the beautiful sport of boxing. And I especially like moments like this. Hall of Famer Bernard Hopkins defends Gervonta Tank Davis and says that Tank Davis is going to be a Hall of Famer himself when he decides to hang it up. Now, let me take you through it. Gervonta Davis, he had his press conference with Lamont Roach some time ago, a couple weeks ago, and he stated something that was a shock and sent shock waves through the boxing circuits. And he stated almost a disinterest for boxing beyond 2025. Some people believe him, some people don't. Some people think it's, he'll be lured in to stay by the money, and maybe it's a ploy to increase his value. Scarcity creates value. So if you're threatening to hang him up, then people are forced to pay you your worth. And if they want to keep you, they're forced to pay like they weigh, right? So I don't know what prompted it, but this is what Gervonta said. So it's got a lot of people talking about the subject of Tank retiring. Now, Bernard Hopkins, who is a fighter from Philly, legend in the game, part of his story is he did a stint in jail, in prison, and came back to do legendary things and win a world title. That's crazy to spend so many years in prison and then come out and, you could say you fought Roy Jones twice, you fought Kawasaki, you beat Tarver, you beat Kelly Pavlik, who was on a tear, stuff like that. So I'm not going to go over B-Hop's whole repertoire and his jacket and his whole resume, but if you know, you know. And if you're watching my channel, you should be researching the legends of the sport. So Bernard Hopkins, he just came to bat, and that's the skinny of it. He said that Tank will be a Hall of Famer, and this is so funny and ironic. And I know the Tank haters have to be livid right now that B-Hop said that, because here's what I noticed. Bernard Hopkins owes nothing, and I repeat, nothing, to Gervonta Davis. I don't believe they're friends. If anything, when Golden Boy fighter Ryan Garcia was fighting Tank in 2023, the two were at odds. I remember at the weigh-in, B-Hop touched Gervonta Davis and he started screaming. Tank started screaming on him like, "Don't touch me. Don't you ever touch me. Like, I don't know what you think this is, blah, 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 woom, woom, wompty," right? So they don't even like each other, to my knowledge, right? Or at least at that moment in time, they didn't really seem to be feeling each other. So again, you got a guy like B-Hop who really has no reason to cape for Gervonta Davis and uplift him. If anything, Ryan Garcia is the Golden Boy fighter and Tank beat him. So what you see more often in these instances is when that's the case, they'll badmouth the person like Tank because they're not affiliated with him and he beat one of their guys. So they don't have nothing good to say about him. So I respect that Bernard Hopkins told the truth and told his true opinion. And it's just so funny because all the Tank haters, let them tell it. Tank's resume is lacking. It's horrible. Yada, yada, yada. Oh, he's 30 and look at his resume. They won't give you context like Lomachenko just ducked him and they couldn't get the Shakur Stevenson fight off the ground. They'll just say, look at his resume at 30. And even if you look at his resume at 30, let's look at it. His last fight was a ranked guy, Frank Martin, who I think can still win a title at 140 and do good for himself. Obviously, only time reveals what will happen to Frank Martin, but I have faith that Frank Martin can still turn in good performances despite being brutally knocked out. And here's another thing. To take a ranked guy and brutally knock him out with 2 punches, somebody who's not only ranked, because there are some times where politics will have a guy ranked and he's not that good, but somebody who beat Michelle Rivera, And Michelle Rivera beat Euron, who just dropped Floyd Schofield, who Shakur Stevenson's fighting. But again, y'all don't know boxing, so y'all didn't know that. And you have Frank Martin, who beat Artem Haratunian, who's Shakur Stevenson's last opponent before Shakur Stevenson, and he was ranked, and people have been checking for him. We know he's good, right? And he brutally knocked him out with the single shots, basically. On the flip side, you look at a guy like Jaime Munguia, he got like 40 plus fights, only one loss to Canelo, and he was a huge favorite to beat this Sudase guy who had 27 fights, only 4 by way of knockout. So on paper, he has no power. And Jaime Munguia got brutally knocked out by a guy with no power who hadn't fought in a year, only had 4 knockouts in almost 30 fights, so he has no pop. And we just seen in the hometown fight where he was a huge favorite and he was the promoter favorite because it was a top rank event. Jaime Munguia just did a pact with Top Rank. He just gets knocked out. So people got to put respect on wins like Frank Martin, who we know is better than Surase and he had better resume than Surase. No one even knew who this Sudase who this guy was until now he put himself on the map, right? So people, they're trying very hard to undermine and like damage Tank. But then when you ask the professionals like B-Hop and the fighters who sparred him, like the Vargas son, Fernando Vargas' son, they're like, man, Tank, ain't nobody hit me that hard. Or Anthony Peterson, or guys that are bigger than Tank, right? Like Luis Cuba Arias. All these fighters are saying Tank's a legend, Tank is that dude. Tyson Fury, he is getting ready for the Usyk fight, and he just said, the question was, who is the best American fighter right now? Tyson Fury said Gervonta Tank Davis. So this is phenomenal and it's lovely because old media in the resistance, they want so bad for Tank not to be the dude, so they hate on him. Look at his resume. But Tyson Fury's not saying that. B-Hop's saying he will be a Hall of Famer guaranteed. And again, he has no allegiance to them. Meanwhile, the usual suspects, the resistance, old media, they're trying to suggest that Tank ain't this and Tank needs to do more. So we already know what it is. A lot of politics in this sport of boxing. Tank, listen to the fighters. Listen to the fighters because they're telling you what it is. And the only fighters that aren't, look at who they're tethered to. Do they have an agenda? Like, okay, if you're connected to, like, let's say Bomac. Bomac is connected to Terrence Crawford, who had a social media beef with Tank, and Keyshawn Davis and Shakur Stevenson, who say they want to fight Tank. So I wouldn't look for him to say anything positive about Tank given his circle, right? But when you look at somebody who's non-biased, who just doesn't really have much to do with Tank, they're telling you what it is. And I find it funny. So y'all can keep hating.